Hi, my name is Sam Johnson and I am a voice teacher. Today I will be reacting to and analyzing Wren and Chinchilla performing chalk outlines live. If you are curious about how voices work and how to use your own voice better, check out my book, Open Your Mouth, Learn How to Sing. There's a link in the description. It will make you a better singer, or know at least a little bit more about singing. That's a promise.
Still here in this bed that I crawled in.
Cool. It's a very jazzy thing to hold on the consonant, the N at the end of a phrase. There's da 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 holding. So that's a thing that is really worth playing around with. I think that a lot of people accidentally or unintentionally, they will hold out consonants and make consonants more important than they actually are in the middle of phrases. And I think that often is worth not doing, like trying to hold out the vowel as long as you can. But when you're doing it at the end of a phrase or on an N or an M or an NG, and it's very purposeful, then I think it's a really cool choice. I also like how the video introduced itself by showing how live it is and how the acoustics of the room sound, so that when he starts singing, it feels like it's coming out of a place, where I feel like a lot of times live videos or live studio videos, they just feel like they're not real. They don't feel like they're in a place and a time. And this, I think, establishes that really well, so it feels more connected to him as a person who is in place and time. Anyway, I like it so far.
I hope that I'm someone else in the morning.
So he does the same thing on the ning on that one, but all of his other vowels in the phrase are quite elongated. It's not, I hope I'm not someone else. I hope I'm not someone else. It's got real legato. It's got very open vowels.
So take this one, wash it down and you'll be fine.
That time it kind of went to more of an E instead of the N, but they sound kind of similar to me, which is interesting. Maybe it's just because of how many high frequencies are present in an E because of how high your tongue is, and similar high frequencies present with the N. Kind of interesting that they sound so similar.
Walk around in the floating chalk outline.
He also does a lot of pulling off of the sound at the end, pulling off of the volume and going into heavy vibrato, which is a very jazzy thing to do. But it's also just a really useful thing for adding vibrato into anything that's like not musical theater or opera. If you're singing anything other than those genres, you probably still want some vibrato, but if you balance it, if you use vibrato only when you get quiet at the end and you kind of add breathiness at the end, it just fits the stylistic requirements of pop a little bit better than if you go in a floating chalk outline. Like that just sounds a little bit silly versus chalk outline, pulling off like he does.
So it goes, let it be. In the gallows, balanced on my toes so I can breathe.
And he's holding to that convention of pulling off at the end of every phrase. It's obviously very, very purposeful. When he went to the goal, you could hear some of his accent. I'm assuming he's a UK guy. One of the kingdoms that was united was or is. But how he rounded his goal on that, I think, is actually quite helpful for singing up around your first bridge. So I think that starting with that first phrase with that rounder O sets him up so that the next few phrases are already in a pretty good place and he can kind of be a little more free with them.
But little by little, bit by bit, I push it back down with a new habit. If not for long, just for a while, I'll bury myself with a great big
love how dynamic he was when he came back down. So some of these high notes I think are sounding a little on the edge of pressed. Some of them are sounding like about as perfect of a mix as I think you could ever ask for. And it's interesting that like on the A, when he goes up to the highest note, it's almost always that more narrow, mixy kind of timbre. And then sometimes when he comes back down, that's where the sound will open a little bit more. It'll get that more yelly kind of quality, but it's not so big of a difference that it sounds like, oh my gosh, that's a totally different voice, or oh, it just sounds unpleasant. To me, it's finding a nice balance of like going away from your really comfortable home base, but not so far that it starts to get a little bit scary.
Oh mama, oh mama, erase ourselves in these chalk outlines.
He also gets quite a bit of roughness on his voice. It's kind of easy to recreate that roughness if you use a little bit of vocal fry kind of stuff. But to add that roughness up in this really difficult part of a voice to sing in is not like generally a super easy thing to do if you are doing it right. I think a lot of people, when they go up there, they're just like not singing as efficiently as might be possible because it's hard. It's just like a weird part of most guys' voices. But I think that he is more techniqued than that. I do think that he is kind of choosing to add that kind of rougher sound, and that's really interesting to me. And the biggest reasons that I believe that are because his top notes are just like too perfect. When he goes up to the A and stuff, it sounds so controlled, like a really, really nice mix to me. And also because of his use of dynamics. He's not making everything as loud as possible up there, where I think that if everything was loud and everything was a little bit shouty, then I wouldn't think it's on purpose. And I guess some of that also brings in my own aesthetic preference of just not liking it when it's that open, that loud, that yelly all the time, but really liking it when it's that some of the time.
Sertraline and a sip of serotonin.
Nice. Yeah, she goes into a very, very heady place. It's a huge contrast to how he was singing. She does the same sort of end thing at the very end. Cool. Their voices contrast really well. I hope they sing together.
Don't cry, 'cause there's a pill for everything.
Similar playing with dynamics in a really cool way. Very fun, sharp nails. They scare me. Wow.
Take this one, wash it down and you'll be fine.
Good. Also, when she goes to this, it's more of a this. Take this one instead. Take this one, which is another of the more that you get used to the difference in timbres of what I just demonstrated, and that you are able to control where you are in that spectrum, that will pay off a lot, because generally as we start going toward really high notes, we want it to be a little closer to that narrower these kind of place. And if you want it to sound more yelly, we want to go to more of that this kind of place.
The feeling goes and you draw a chalk outline.
Yeah, versus that one where she went to the feeling goes and it was very, very open. It's only up to the A flat. I think that it's really useful to know where you can get away with making that more open sound and where you have to go to the more narrow one, and only do it where it works, right? Like if you go a little bit too high with that more open one, things fall apart, things don't really work well. If you stay too narrow too early, sometimes things start sounding a little bit silly. So just know what both of them do, what parts of your range they seem to help the most, and limit yourself to only when they sound the best.
So it goes, let it be.
Yeah, I really like how the natural reverb of the space is mixing their voices. It just makes things sound good. And I don't go on the TikTok very much, but I know there was a big trend for a while of people going into into rooms like this, or buildings that are not sound treated, or stairwells where there's a ton of echo, because all of that reverb is really helpful at making people sound good. It just covers up things that are a little bit funky.
In the gallows, I'm balanced on my toes so I can breathe.
Yeah. So you can see this popping out of his neck. And sometimes that's a sign that people are adding a little bit too much pressure. And like I've said, I think that one of the appeals that I get from him is that he's dancing around sounds that are too pressed, but he's doing it in a really successful way, and that he is adding a release valve also, usually in each of the phrases, that he does go into something that's a little bit pressed. And I think if we didn't have that release valve, I would be a lot more worried about this. And I think that he might not be able to maintain the stuff that he was doing, because, yeah, if you're just 100% pressure here all the time, that's a little rough. That said, this isn't inherently a sign that things are going poorly, or it's just a sign that you can see this vein popping out. Like, it's not... I think a lot of times people see something like that and they're like, oh my gosh, they're trying so hard, they're working so hard. And it's just not always the case. Like, sometimes for sure. And that, plus a bunch of other evidence that things aren't going well, aka if someone was not singing on pitch, or if someone wasn't able to sing with dynamic shifts, then that would mean that this is a little bit more of an important thing that we should deal with. But from everything that I'm seeing, I don't think it matters.
But little by little, bit by bit, I push it back down with a new habit.
And then when he goes to the new, he kind of lets it go really round, back off on the volume, and it flips into head voice a little bit more. Something that's been really interesting for me in the last year or so is playing with where you open your mouth. Open your mouth, learn how to sing. New book by Sam Johnson, available now. If you close your mouth a little too much and you still give all of the energy that he's giving, it just sounds a little bit tense. If you back off on the energy and you close your mouth, it encourages it to go up into head voice a little bit more, which is a thing that is necessary when you're singing well. The contrast to that is when you open your mouth a lot and it helps you add more energy. It helps you stay in that more yelly kind of coordination. And I talk about all of the actual, like, why that is the case in the book, Open Your Mouth. So I hope you like it. Please read it and leave an Amazon review.
If not for long, just for a while, I'll bury myself with a great big smile. Oh my, oh my, we trace ourselves in these chalk outlines.
Yeah, and then when Chinchilla goes up to the C sharp, it does not have that really broad vowel sound. I think a lot of times people think of vowels and pitches as like very separate things, and that you should be able to get to every single pitch using every single vowel and every coordination. And it's just not true. Like, there are some things that work and there are some things that don't work as much. And it's kind of that maxim in art of you need to learn all of the rules so that you can break the rules. And it's true, because, like, if you don't know the rules of, like, this part of my range works really better with these more narrow vowels or with more open vowels or with whatever, then you're just not going to be able to actually sing, right? And I think that good singing is breaking rules a lot, because that's what makes things interesting. If everything was just follow the rules, to me, like, one, I don't think that you're able to train yourself to follow the rules 100% of the time. So there's always going to be this X amount of time that you're breaking the rules. I just think it's impossible. If you are able to follow all the rules all the time, that would, to me, imply that you're focused on following the rules all the time. And to me, that's really quite boring. As soon as you start getting into actual communication and storytelling, you're going to be breaking rules, which means that we need to find out what the rules are somewhere outside of your actual storytelling. And I think the best way to do that is by doing vocal exercises and experiments like that. so that you know what rules work for you, where you can do these things, and that you can trust that you can break the rules sometimes. Like, the reason that I think they're able to go to these things is because they have proven to themselves that they can break the rules every once in a while and it doesn't wreck them. Or that, like, even if it feels a little bit funky, that they know that they can persevere and just have to deal with feeling a little bit funky. But yeah, they're really, really good singing. They're not going really super high. That's a lie. Chinchilla, Ren is going quite high. Ren is singing really high, and he's singing in a way that, like, if you don't do it really perfectly, I just don't think it works. Chinchilla in this part, like, yeah, she's going up to the C sharp, which is high enough that you either have to really quite yell it or go into this better mix. And I think she is mixing in a really good way.
Oh mama, erase us.
Good. With that one, when he got up to the top, the last two notes were flipped. The ones right before were not. If he was trying to make that a smoother transition up, so it didn't have that sharp glitch sound when he goes into that higher place, I would suggest backing off on the volume a little bit right before it. Like, look at the and if you just back off a little bit on that note, I think it would encourage it to go up into head voice a little bit earlier so that there doesn't have to be that massive shift, that release of pressure, release of acoustic position, and just like a sudden tonal shift.
It's such a perfect day, take it just in case, take it just in case. I'm scared of being okay, 'cause all things change, all things change. It's such a perfect day, it's a beautiful shade, it's a beautiful shade.
And then she goes back into more how she started the whole piece, or her verse in it, where it's much headier, it's very released, and it's very quiet. It's a perfect harmony to what he's doing.
I'm scared of being okay, 'cause all things change.
When she got louder on the all, I would bet that the placement that she felt in the more soprano-y, released, lofty place was the same as when she went into more of a modal full voice. And again, like, I'm not completely convinced that what she went to when she got louder there was full voice, but it was louder, and that's good enough. We just need dynamic range. And like, sometimes to get louder, you're going to change your vocal mode a little bit. And other times to get louder, you're not going to. Like, again, there is no right all the time.
But little by little, bit by bit, I'll push it back down with a new habit. If not for long, just for a while, I'll bury myself with a great big smile.
Good. So when she goes to that is a huge mouth. When she said just, her mouth was still quite open. Her jaw was dropped quite a bit, but inside it still sounded like just versus like us just, and that's by keeping the integrity of the just as she opens her mouth. Yeah, huge mouth right there. So she really is. It's not generally that easy to sing in this part of someone's range with that big of a mouth. I find a lot more success starting quite small to find the mixy place. And to me, it's another proof that she is so comfortable in this part of her range that she's able to go to these sounds that are a little bit more extreme, these positions that might not work for someone who's just starting out, but that it won't totally shake her sense of security in her voice. I also just love that they're doing all of this on one take. Like, it's really, really cool. I think that it's, I'm not dwelling on it, but like, there are moments that there's more dissonance because maybe they're not perfectly tuned. And I think that actually is a benefit, especially using an analog instrument instead of digital things that are like perfectly tuned, doing it in this room that is physical and that things are going to interact, sound waves are going to interact with the room in a way that is like not perfect all the time. It gives more room for imperfections vocally. And so choosing a good set and setting like this, I think, will make it a lot more likely for people to keep singing if things are like imperfect.
Oh mama, oh mama, trace ourselves in these chalk outlines.
So she's going up to the E right there. It's not a low note. And it doesn't sound yelled at all. To me, that's proof that it's a mix. It just sounds so easy when she goes there. And if you're struggling to do that, I would suggest start in head voice and keep playing around with, can I toggle back and forth between how much hold on there is in my voice, how much it feels like a yell, and how much it feels like a total release, because that's one thing that you need to kind of toggle independently of the vowel shape. But the good vowel shapes will help you find the right placement. And then it's like, can we find the good placement, the good vowel shape, and then add the energy of the yell.
Oh mama, oh mama, erase ourselves in these chalk outlines.
Yeah, that's really cool. When she went to the erase at the end there, she actually turned it into erase hour, so she was able to keep vocal folds vibrating all the way through that phrase. I think it's mostly just a cool stylistic thing. I don't think that's really like an essential vocal technique thing, but it's a cool stylistic thing. And sometimes singing a consonant that is generally not phonated and phonating through it is just like a weird thing. And a lot of style is just weird things. And a lot of imperfections when we're singing lead to weird things, which lead to style. So we can't stop, or we have to stop trying to be perfect because it's making you boring. Like, perfect is often boring. Or if you're watching someone else and you're like, wow, that was a perfect performance, but then you turn around to yourself and you're like, wow, I did all of these things wrong. I guarantee you that whoever was singing it was like, would also be able to be like, yeah, I did all of these things wrong. And I bet that some of the things that they'd think that they did wrong are the things that you think make it perfect. So we can't think about trying to make things perfect technically. It's just not a thing that exists. And if it does, it's boring. Both of these are really wonderful singers. Excellent job. And really good musicians. Like, I mean, what's the difference? A good singer is able to use their voice in a lot of interesting ways and are able to repeat it, not completely on command, but like pretty dang close to on command. A good musician is musical. And so we need to have both of those things. And I feel like they did really successfully. I wasn't really as focused on the words, I know. And I from what I've heard, a lot of people are very into Ren because of the words. But I think that as a vocal technician, from what I've seen in this, good. Like it. Good stuff, Ren. Good stuff, Chinchilla. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below, and go check out my book, Open Your Mouth, Learn How to Sing. It is available via a link in the description, and if you do get it, I would really appreciate if you would leave a review on Amazon. Thank you.